if you could eat more plants, and what if eating more plants could actually help you live longer, feel more energized, and prevent chronic diseases? Sounds pretty powerful, right? Wow. Today's episode of Plateful of Insights, this is exactly what we're going to dive into. We're going to get into science behind plant-based eating, how it can transform your health, both short-term and the long-term. Now, to be clear, you may see plant-based diets, plant-based eating, vegan, vegetarian, all over the internet. And I'm not talking about being extreme or restrictive about it, or giving up favorite foods. That's not what we're about. We're going to walk through a balanced approach to this, but the core of this episode that we're wanting to get into is how can plant-based eating affect your health positively in the long term. And to help break this down, I'm joined by two of our amazing dietitians here at Revive, Roshni and Mel, who you would have seen before. And if not, go check out previous episodes. And if this is the first episode that you've watched of ours, then welcome. Thank you for spending time with us to go through this awesome topic, which both of you and also myself, all three of us, have expertise and experience in with plant-based eating. So I'm sure this conversation is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, Roshni and Mel, for joining on this lovely morning. Okay, so let's dive in. Roshni, we're gonna kick it off with your piece here, starting with big picture, and something that we've talked a lot about at Revive. Not a ton, but it's come up a little bit. Is this concept of lifestyle medicine? And for those of you who haven't heard this term before, we'll give a little bit of a brief introduction to it. But Roshni, for anyone who's new to this term, what does it mean, and why the heck does it connect to the concept of plant-based eating?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brandon. And lifestyle medicine is one of those hot topics, you could say, that's been coming up quite a bit, and especially in our practice. When we think about lifestyle medicine, sometimes when we go in to see a care provider, whether it's your doctor or another healthcare provider, we may have seen that symptom treatment approach, where we're just kind of looking at um, the first symptoms that we're looking at. We're not really digging deeper, but where we look at lifestyle medicine, it's a flip on this approach. And so we're looking at that root cause of disease, so any kind of chronic disease or condition, and we're doing it in a very multifaceted approach. So it might not just be the nutrition. We're really looking at the way it's interconnected with our physical activity, our sleep, our stress, social connections, and then avoiding harmful substances. So we really want to take all of these little puzzle pieces, put them together, and get at the root cause of a condition, rather than just kind of doing that Band-Aid approach or looking at one symptom. We want to look at the bigger picture of all of these components. And so today, Brandon, you mentioned the plant-based eating. And so nutrition is one of those main pillars of lifestyle medicine. And plant-based eating is where we have a lot of strong evidence for both preventing and managing chronic disease, such as like diabetes, heart disease, and even cancer. And this comes from research that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has done. And a lot of their guidelines recommend a whole food, plant-based eating pattern as that foundation for better health. So today we'll kind of delve into what does that look like and how can we take that evidence, put it into practice, and what that might look like. But I think it's a great approach to start. Even if you're building awareness around plant-based eating, I think this might be a good episode just to kind of learn a little bit more and perhaps gain some insight on how it might be able to prevent or manage chronic disease.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. It's funny because our CEO Lorene has talked many times about how we only discovered this concept at Revive. Now, we didn't discover it. I should phrase that properly. We became aware of the concept we've been practicing like this for pretty much as long as Revive has been in existence, since 2006, because it makes sense. It's an approach that is very holistic and takes into consideration everything about a human that we're working with. Uh, so it's a very exciting concept to actually have an anchor and have an evidence base around it. Super neat. Mel, we're gonna hop to you here. So Roshni gave one such example of a plant-based eating pattern, whole food plant-based, but there's vegetarian, there's vegan. So when we say plant-based, what does this actually look like on a day-to-day basis? Can you break that down for us?
Yes, definitely. And that's just it. Like you said, there's many different forms. And I think that's where some confusion sometimes happens in the media or, on social media where, the term kind of plant-based is getting thrown around or, and people think that they know what it means. Like, oh, well, that just means, vegan. And I'm not plant-based then if that means that it's vegan. But I think it's really important to kind of break down what it means. So that kind of plant-based aspect doesn't mean plant only. It's not about giving up, animal products. It's not about, giving up those other things that are non-plant based, but rather focusing on making plants the center of your plate more often. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean restricting it to, just vegetarian or just vegan. It's flexible. It's plant-centered. That's the kind of core concept there. So you're emphasizing foods from different plants, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, and of course you can still include, those animal products if you choose to. So, but really the focus is making plants the star of that plate. And like Roshni said, that's where, we start to see those long-term health benefits. And, traditionally, those plants are harder for people to get on their plates as well. So making that the kind of star of the plate just helps people be a little bit more aware of plants there too.
And I think it's a good point that you mentioned around what you'll see online, because we approach it in much the way that you described, wherein plants are the star. We're adding things in, we're not restricting things. It's not an all or nothing approach, but I feel like we could probably all agree that you will absolutely come across people everywhere that are on one side, or they take a position in this space and they will just grasp and hold on to it for dear life and not let go. And those are the ones where you may see some of that type of messaging, in my experience. Is that what you've seen as well?
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's like even like food labels. Like we could probably go into a whole like episode on food marketing and that people are putting the term like plant-based on their labels, and then that is also a confusing thing because there's not really a true, definition for that. So sometimes on products, plant-based means that it's fully vegan or it's allergen friendly and all of those things. But other times it just means that they, threw in, I don't know, a couple of seeds on a piece of whatever, some sort of food item, and they're calling it plant-based. So it's very, kind of into the nuances of food marketing there, which is always fun to talk about.
Roshni, before we dive into your section, I'm curious. Actually, maybe both of you. What is the wildest or most confusing thing you've seen on a food label or at the store or anything like this that kind of gets at, Mel, what you were mentioning around, like the label was so confusing, like it said plant-based but it was actually vegan, or it said plant-based and it wasn't, and there was animal product, or like something so obscure and you just looked at it and you're just like, what? This is extremely confusing. Can you think of anything? I know that was an off the notes question that wasn't there, but if something pops into your mind, I'm really curious.
It's tricky. It's confusing as well. I think even like stepping outside the dietitian brain and just going into the grocery store catches me off guard sometimes too. When you're like looking for a plant-based product and it's in the same section as like meat-based proteins, but then it's saying like, I feel like the food marketing has really taken a handle on using plant-based as a health kind of marketing approach. So they'll put in like, plant-based ingredients, and then it's in the plant-based section, and then you're reading the ingredients and it's like a piece of chicken. And it's great how far we've come with like some of the products and the creativity on like using soy proteins and creating all sorts of like meat alternatives. But then it's just, yeah, it can be confusing and nutty when we're kind of using, like, sometimes they'll spell chicken differently, but other times it's spelled properly and it might actually be chicken. So
Yeah, I agree with that too, Roshni. And I think the piece that sometimes comes up for like my clients, if there's like a dairy intolerance or something like that, and they're like, okay, well, I thought that, yeah, all of these plant-based things, because it said plant-based, meant that there's no dairy in it. And then, we're going through the label and, modified milk proteins or something like that. So sometimes it's not even about that they are trying to eat plant-based. Sometimes it's like they are relying on those terminologies to help with food allergies or intolerances there too. So it's kind of, yeah, just a whole rabbit hole of things.
Anyways, let's get into this next piece here. So I would say probably one of the key pieces when it comes to plant-based eating, or just plants in general, is something that's very unique to plants. As if there's one nutrient that I feel like a lot of humans could get more of, it's fiber. Uh, so, fiber is part of plants that's not digestible by the human digestive tract, which means that it helps to slow down the digestion of other foods around it. As a result of slower digestion, you get slower absorption, which means more stable blood sugar levels, keeps you full for longer. And this is some of the things, not the only things, of course, that has been shown to with fiber to help reduce the chance of or help manage diabetes, reduce cholesterol, help with supporting weight changes or weight maintenance. So, Roshni, how much fiber should people be aiming for, and how does plant-based eating help with this?
okay, this is a hot topic because I always get this question from clients. So I'm going to, with anything in nutrition, give you a bit of insight, some guidelines, but then put that exception in on how we can customize it for each individual that's listening in on this podcast. So kind of the fiber recommendations using our Canadian Health Canada guidelines range from, depending on your age, all the way from 19 grams per day if you're younger, and then, younger than 13, and then climbing up as we get to like the middle age, 38 grams, and then 50 plus, ranging back down to 30 grams. So we kind of see this fiber recommendation change throughout the lifespan, just depending on how our digestive tract changes. And also, I would say it's never always linear. So we'll talk about some benefits of fiber, but I think with gut health, it's always about finding where you feel most comfortable and that fiber level where you feel like you're reaping the benefits, but it's not uncomfortable. And always doing it gradually, because as much as it's exciting to say let's get to it, hit that 30 grams of fiber per day, we really, really want to take our time getting there because fiber is so powerful. It's doing its job, like you said, Brandon. It's slow to digest, so it's going to improve our satiety, help us, improve our energy. It has some benefits on like blood sugar management and then that chronic disease prevention. But because of all those benefits, we really want to, titrate up to our goal. And so, yeah, like kind of hitting that range of that, I guess, 19 all the way up to 35 grams per day. But just, I would encourage keeping something like a food journal. If you're wanting to increase fiber, try and monitor like your food intake and your symptoms and see how you do as you gradually increase fiber on your plate. Whether that's like, as Mel mentioned, through some of those lovely fruits or vegetables or whole grains that you're trying, those beans, pulses, lentils are great sources of fiber. So a really, really I guess, exciting part of a plant-based diet is the fiber will add up quick. It's in a lot of the foods, but it's just about finding kind of that balance that works for you, and then also always say making sure you're staying hydrated. Because when we bump up that fiber, you want to make sure it's a little bit of a seesaw, that we're getting enough of that white water that helps absorb it. And that brings me into, without going too much into detail, just a little note about the types of fiber. Since we're talking about chronic disease management, there's a type of fiber called soluble fiber. And just as the name suggests, it's really good at soaking up water. And because of that, it's great at reducing cholesterol, specifically LDL cholesterol, which is kind of that lousy or bad cholesterol that we want to lower in the body when we're trying to prevent heart disease or lower blood pressure. And so we really suggest having at least 5 to 10 grams of soluble fiber in a day within your overall target of 30 grams per day. But again, that target can kind of flex depending on what you're tolerating and the amount of fiber that you feel you're best at.
I like soluble fiber. This is the one that you'll see a lot of people, or not a lot of people, a lot of products in the grocery store that will probably say helps reduce cholesterol. Like it's like oats or oat products, cereals that are made of oats, beans, even some fruits. Although, I mean, I feel like grocery stores could probably do a little bit more stuff in the produce section, like fruits and vegetables, to describe some of these benefits, because even things like people probably wouldn't think of, like apples and pears, like they got a good amount of soluble fiber. You wouldn't really think of that most of the time. I would find, though.
No, it's always back to the food marketing, and much more interesting to food market on like the packaged products, but then we often forget about the whole foods, and like a whole apple or a whole pear, and the benefits of those things, for sure.
Little plug to my Viva plan and the Vivapedia section, which has some of that information that you can go and look at. How much fiber do apples and pears have? It's in there. But I think one of the key things, so the targets you described, Roshni, excellent. A gradual approach, keeping a food journal to monitor how you're feeling as you're increasing it. Do 1 or 2 servings at a time kind of thing. Don't try and go from not much to a lot, because it may not feel great. You may have to spend a lot of time close by a washroom. So you can't really talk about fiber or things around fiber without going into some elements of plant-based foods that benefit the gut. Fiber, of course, is a huge component of that, but this is an area of research that you can't really see plant-based diets without coming across something in the realm of gut health, like the gut microbiome. For those of you that have not seen this before, this is a little ecosystem of bacteria that plays a huge role for human health, especially when it comes to digestion, but even mood regularity, immune function. So what aspects, Mel or Roshni, either of you who want to contribute to this one, what aspects of plant-based diets would you highlight specifically for gut health?
Yeah, so I mean, I will always have a disclaimer that I am not a gut health expert by any means. We do have a couple other dietitians on the team who are like super knowledgeable in this area. Plug for Laura V and Kelsey as well. Those are our two most knowledgeable folks. But of course, there's still those core concepts that can apply to just general health when we're looking at plant-based diets, or even just in general as well. So there's kind of those two components, prebiotics and probiotics. Those are usually the most common two questions that I get from clients, is about those two components. What do they mean? Do I just need to take supplements for those things? Like where can I get them? Is usually the questions there. So I'll kind of break it down of the difference between the two, and why they're really important to have together as well. So prebiotics found in tons of different fiber-rich foods like legumes, seeds, grains, fruits, vegetables, and then some nuts as well. And the key piece about the prebiotics is that they feed our gut microbes. Then probiotic foods. So some examples of that are like some sauerkrauts, some kimchi, some pickled vegetables, like some yogurts, kefir, those sorts of things are really, it's about the live microorganisms there. And so they're adding more of that good bacteria into the gut there as well. So with that kind of powerhouse of the prebiotics and probiotics together, they really help support digestion, reduce inflammation, and like Roshni's kind of alluded to with some of the chronic disease management, it may improve insulin sensitivity and heart health there as well.
Yeah, I think you summarized that really well, Mel. So just kind of, as you mentioned, pairing those two together, having a combination, like even setting a goal such as like one prebiotic food and one probiotic food a day
Roshni?
can be a great way where you get that nice balance of those prebiotics that are feeding those bacteria and the probiotics that are adding to that gut microbe population. And so over time, like I always say, like this is one of those things that takes a little bit of time. So for our listeners, don't be discouraged. If you've just started with prebiotics, probiotics, it'll take a little bit of time because we are literally changing the amount and the types of gut bacteria. And so we want to give it a little bit of time to kind of evolve. And so over time, the research also shows us that changes in our gut microbe can be very positive in reducing risk factors for chronic disease, as Mel mentioned. So definitely another really important part of a plant-based diet.
And I think from what I've read, anyways, is a lot of the foods that either have prebiotics or probiotics. I mean, of course, they're going to have, especially the prebiotic rich foods. They have a ton of fiber, anyways, and so if we understand when we increase your fiber intake, a lot of those foods have a good amount of prebiotics in them, and if we're changing the makeup of your gut bacteria, your microbiome, that's some of why you have to get used to it. Your bacterial makeup is shifting in your gut, and if that happens really rapidly, that's some of where the symptoms can come from when you're changing your fiber intake quite sharply. So we'll end off this next piece as some key pieces that make plant-based eating easier, or if it's something that people are just getting into. We've already talked many points about this through each section. Some considerations that you may think of when you're adding more in, if you're wanting to explore vegetarian or vegan eating, or if plant-based eating is something that you haven't really explored at all, no matter what the label is. Is there any last thoughts that either of you can think of that would make this easier for folks, practically speaking?
I was just going to add a point here of, we chatted a little bit about the craze around plant-based eating, how, we hear about these buzzwords like vegan or plant power or, really talking about super nutrients. And it can be a lot where it feels like we want to take this all or nothing mentality that this food has all these great benefits. If I only eat this, I'll get everything I need in like, some microgreens, for example, that I read about yesterday. So I think it's really important to just kind of take that step back. I would encourage the listeners to just have a quick think about, what are your favorite plant-based foods? Have a look at maybe some of the ones Mel and Brandon mentioned today, whether it's like those protein foods, plant-based proteins such as our like beans, our peas, our lentils that are great sources of both protein and fiber. Maybe you feel like you wanted to try out some new vegetables, and there's so many great ways that you can kind of explore, get creative in the kitchen with cooking those, where it doesn't have to just be, salads are great, but if you want to be mixing those into dishes, cooking them in different ways, that's another great way to boost the fiber on your plate. And start small, really. So if you feel like, you're having a combination of animal-based proteins and plant-based proteins right now, maybe just try and have like a meatless Monday, or maybe on this Saturday or Sunday when you have a little bit more time to experiment, try out a plant-based protein and see how it does, and no pressure, right? So this is all about trying it out, experimenting. But I do think it's worthwhile if you're wanting to kind of see some of these benefits. And then I would kind of jump back on that point about food journaling, food symptom journaling. And it's a great way to kind of track your progress and build that awareness on how, your diet and your lifestyle, is that really improving how you're feeling, and looking at some of those long-term benefits as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Roshni, too, on the like that kind of experiment side of things as well, because that's one of the biggest things that I usually hear from clients is, like vegetables are disgusting, or like all of these things are horrible. But then, when we dig into the how, like, okay, how are you cooking it and how are you eating it? It's like, oh, well, I just, I just cut it up and eat it, or I just like throw it in a pan and then I like steam it. But then it's about like, what else are you putting on it? Because it's got to still taste good. It's got to still have, like some different spices on it and like different flavors. So there's lots of different things that you can always add to those vegetables, add to those, different plant-based foods to help, improve the flavor of it as well. Because another example is beans. It will just taste like pretty much straight up fart. if that's what you're gonna have, is just a plain bean. Go for it. If you love it, go for it. But big fan of putting those like spices and flavorings on as well to make it enjoyable.
Yeah, plant-based eating doesn't always have to just be a plain salad in a bowl and, you're hungry in 20 minutes kind of thing. But we have done a lot of episodes thus far that go through cooking, preparation, tips in the kitchen to make things easier. If this is something where you feel like your cooking and food prep skills is just so not where it needs to be to go down this path whatsoever, and our YouTube videos or the podcasts aren't doing it for you, reach out to us. One of our dietitians, one of us, or another one can help you work through these things and build skill and knowledge and confidence in the kitchen. We have a couple of chefs on our team who this is what they help people with. Let those things not be as much of a barrier for you. But for now, I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Hopefully we provided you with a couple nuggets and key points that you feel like could make plant-based eating either easier, more interesting, something they want to explore or continue doing if you're already doing it. But in my opinion, I don't know what you two think, but some people have called it a trend. I don't think it's a trend because there's research behind it. What would you say? Trend or not a trend?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I don't think it's a short-term thing. I definitely think some of the research and the I guess the strength of the research that we see in plant-based eating is something that is really significant and very powerful as well. If you're looking to make like a couple changes, there is significant research behind a plant-based dietary pattern, and how it can benefit us in so many ways. We talked about blood sugar today, heart disease. We'll delve into other pieces in future episodes, such as antioxidants that are also part of that plant-based eating pattern. And so I feel like we could continue on this for a long time. So I don't think it's one of those trends where it's just, going to last, a couple months. It's one of those things that I feel like we'll be talking on for years as more and more research comes up, especially when we think about gut health. That's like a newer area in the plant-based eating realm too. So as dietitians, we're constantly trying to stay on top of this, and excited to keep our listeners in the loop with, what is the research saying and how can we put this into practice.
Yeah, no, I love that kind of like summary of I agree with you, Roshni. Like I don't think it's a trend. I think maybe the terminologies might be a trend. Like the names of things might change over time, but like those core concepts, those core principles around, plant-centered foods, putting fruits and vegetables on your plate more often. Like those core concepts will never change. And like you said, Roshni, the evidence around that is still like really strong as well. So whether it's a term that kind of keeps changing and helps people like resonate with those concepts, then maybe that would be something interesting.
Love it. Well, all of you that made it this far in the episode, thank you so much for watching and listening. Thanks for spending some time with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure do the things: subscribe, share, like. If you found some piece of it helpful, share it with a friend who also might find it helpful. You never know what could happen. I can't wait for the next episode. I can't remember what it is, but make sure you check out our previous episodes. We try and release them at least every couple of weeks, if not more often. For now, we'll see. We'll say thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. We'll talk to you very soon.